I bought a Bitcoin for $50 in 2011, forgot about it for years. In 2023, I decided to clean out my old computer and found a wallet. In my head I was already imagining how I would buy a house and a car. And then I realized that I had forgotten the password. I tried all the combinations, even the names of cats, nothing. Now my wife teases me every time I lose something, and I think, I could have been a millionaire. In 2015, I sold 10 Bitcoins to buy a PS4 and a couple of games. It seemed logical at the time. Why would I need these weird virtual coins if I could play GTA? 8 years have passed, the PS4 is outdated, and Bitcoins are now worth about $350,000. I figure if I sell the console, it will only be enough for coffee. A great investment, right? I invested all the money we got for our wedding in Bitcoin. It was 2017, the price was growing, and I was sure that I would soon double my capital. Then the price collapsed, my wife threw a fit and went to live with her mother. I sat in an empty apartment and looked at the charts, hoping for a miracle. And you know what? In 2024, the rate rose, I sold everything and called her back. She came back, along with a lawyer. Now we are dividing the profits in court. My friend talked me into buying Bitcoin in 2013. I bought one coin for $600, but quickly got scared when the price started to fall and sold it for $400. My friend held onto his Bitcoin until 2021 and bought himself a house. I bought myself a lesson. Don't be a coward. In 2012, I used Bitcoin to order a pizza through some new service. It cost about 2 coins back then. Recently, I decided to check what was up with that wallet. It turned out to be the most expensive pizza I've ever had. $70,000 for a double cheese margarita. In 2018, I decided to start mining. I bought a bunch of equipment. The electricity bills started going through the roof, and the neighbors complained about the noise. A year later, I gave in and sold everything, including my Bitcoins, to pay off my debts. Now I look at the rate and think, why didn't I wait? I kept my Bitcoins on an exchange that guaranteed safety. In 2016, the exchange closed, the money disappeared, and the owners disappeared. Now I have a lesson. Never trust exchanges, and a joke that my Bitcoins are on vacation. When Bitcoin dropped to $3,000 in 2018, I bought 5 coins thinking it was my gold mine. A week later, I quit my job thinking I was almost a millionaire. The problem is, I had to wait 5 years for it to pay off. Okay, now I have money, but my boss still won't hire me back. Bought Bitcoin at its peak in 2021 for $60,000. A month later the price dropped. I panicked and sold it for $30,000. Then I decided to get revenge, and bought again when the price was $50,000. Repeated the cycle 3 more times. Bottom line, I spent more than I earned and realized that crypto is not for the faint of heart. In 2010, a friend sent me 1 Bitcoin to try out. I spent it on some online game because I didn't believe it had any value. Now my friend jokes that I lost $35,000. Well, at least I learned to make the right decisions. Or did I? I bought Bitcoin when everyone around me was saying it was the future. I kept it on a flash drive, thinking it was like a key to an apartment, always at hand. A couple of years later, the flash drive was lost, and then I found out that it contained the equivalent of $70,000. Now every week I get text messages from friends. Did you find the flash drive? In 2015, I sold my first 3 Bitcoins to buy a new bike. At the time, it seemed like a smart decision. Everyone already had cool bikes, and I was riding an old one. Now this bike's chain has broken, and the price of those Bitcoins has increased tenfold. Honestly, I feel more sorry for the chain. I kept my Bitcoins on the exchange because it's safe there. In 2017, the exchange disappeared, along with my savings. People ask, how could I trust it? Yes, easily. When you only have numbers in your wallet, it seems like the risks are virtual. Now, every time I lose something, I laugh. Well, at least the exchange is gone. I once invested some of the money I got for my birthday in Bitcoin. A year later the price went up and I decided it was a great chance to buy a car. I bought it and then found out that if I had waited another year I could have bought 2 cars. The car gets old, the lessons never do. Bought Bitcoin at the very beginning, when only geeks knew about it. It was a joke. Look, I'm a modern investor. Then I forgot about it, like an old friend from university. Years later, I found out that my friend had become a billionaire, but I had already lost access to the wallet. Now, every time I see headlines about cryptocurrencies, I feel like the hero of a tragicomedy. The moral? Not all jokes are so funny in retrospect. I sold my first Bitcoins in exchange for an old motorcycle. At the time, it seemed like the deal of the century. I exchanged virtual coins for real hardware. Years passed. The motorcycle has long been rusting in the garage, and the Bitcoins have become a symbol of unfulfilled hopes. Sometimes I go into the garage, look at it and think, maybe I should at least give it to a museum, so that the story is complete. A friend convinced me to start mining in 2017. I invested money, bought equipment, and even started making some money. But the noise from the devices drove the neighbors crazy, and the electricity bills turned into my personal crypto debt. In the end, I sold everything, deciding it wasn't for me. A few years later, the same friend bought a house. On your advice? I asked. No, he replied, on my patience. In 2012, when everyone was talking about Bitcoin, I decided to try something new. I bought a couple of coins, left them in my wallet and forgot about them. Years later, I still had the wallet, but I forgot the password. I tried everything. Birthdays, pet names, even favorite songs. Nothing. Now my wife jokes that I am the most expensive example of a bad memory. And I think this is the best way to learn to protect data. At the peak of the cryptocurrency boom, I decided to take a risk and bought Bitcoin. The price dropped a week later. I sold it. Then I bought it again when the rate started to rise. And so on several times until I realized that I was spending more nerves and money than I was getting. My friend, who had been holding on to his coins from the very beginning, bought an apartment. And I bought a sedative. Now I look at crypto from afar, like a dangerous sport. Once upon a time, my friends and I were saving money for gifts and decided to try paying some of it with Bitcoins. I donated everything I had to be modern. Now, every time we meet, someone reminds me, hey, do you remember that gift that now costs as much as half a house? They laugh, but I think it was my greatest investment in friendship. My friend gave me 1 Bitcoin to try crypto. I immediately spent it on some virtual services in the game. Then it turned out that it was one of the most expensive levels in history. Now my friend jokes, you're just playing on a level of life that is unavailable to the rest of us. When I first heard about Bitcoin, it seemed like some kind of bonus points in games. I bought a couple of coins just for the sake of experiment. A couple of months later I decided to spend them on pizza. This experiment seemed tastier. Years passed, and now this pizza in my memory is worth so much that you could order an entire restaurant. Sometimes I tell this story to friends, and every time someone adds, that pizza clearly had gold ingredients. In 2015, I sold all my Bitcoins to go on a long-awaited vacation. The trip was wonderful. Sea, sun, cocktails. At the time, it seemed like the perfect solution. But now, when I look at old photos from that vacation, I think that for that money I could travel every month now. Now this is my favorite joke about how expensive a beach vacation can be. I once invested all my savings in Bitcoin to prove to my wife that I could be a successful investor. The price dropped almost immediately, and I sold everything in a panic. She laughed, and I was left with an empty wallet and the complete certainty that crypto is not for me. A couple of years later, Bitcoin rose, and my wife now jokes that I should have invested in her advice. In 2016, a friend convinced me to buy Bitcoin. I resisted for a long time, but he insisted. This is the future. I bought a couple of coins and forgot about them. Years passed, and suddenly the price skyrocketed. I decided, time to cash out. And then it turned out that I saved the private key incorrectly. Now, every time a friend comes to me in a new car, I say, nice car. Bitcoin? When I first learned about Bitcoin, I decided to try mining on my home computer. I left it on all night, and in the morning I discovered that it had overheated and burned out. My parents joked for a long time that my internet gold digger couldn't handle the load. Years passed, and when Bitcoin skyrocketed in price, I thought, maybe I should have bought some decent equipment after all. I once bought Bitcoin thinking it was the money of the future. A year later the price started to rise and I decided it was time to sell. I withdrew the money and bought a new phone. Now that phone sits in a drawer and the Bitcoins I sold would have been the payment for the car. Sometimes I turn on my old phone and look at it as a symbol of my financial